Welcome back to Hear Me Out Sports, where we are covering quarterbacks. Very valuable position over here. So, without further ado, let's run it. All right, Week 8 review is how we're going to start this thing off. I will preface this by saying there's lots of buys this week, so we'll try to help you out, make it to the end of the video, and we'll try to give you some options of people you can pick up who might be still in free agency and might help you win your leagues. But with that, we're getting to the Week 8 review where we got QBs at 63.33%. Not terrible, not great. We're trying our best over here. Some of the hits, though, we got Trevor Lawrence, Tua, and Derek Carr. Derek Carr said sit him. It was an awful play. I had him as a fringe, but man, he played awful, and I did say sit him. Trevor Lawrence, we called it on him, and Tua, he played phenomenal, and we called it on him. Misses, we had Justin Fields, Dak Prescott, and Marcus Mariota. I've been hyping up Justin Fields as they've resorted more and more to passing and using him on his feet, and so it's not a huge miss for me, but I did have him in the sit column, so with that, he did have to sit. Some of the close calls, though, we had Geno Smith, Zach Wilson, and Jared Goff. Some of those, again, would have hurt us. Some would have helped us in our percentage, but we're not going to cover too much in that. We're going to cover it after we cover the buys. So with that, we're going to skip over to Week 9 buys. Listen, I'm going to be flat out honest with you guys. This isn't the worst week for having 6 teams on buys. There's not huge losses. We got the Browns, so you got Brissett out. Cowboys, you got Prescott out. Broncos, you got Wilson out. Jones is out with the Giants. Pickett out with the Steelers, and Garoppolo out with the 49ers. The only two I see as really big losses is Dak Prescott and Jimmy G. Because Dak Prescott and Jimmy G both seem to be getting in those double-digit, decent game points. So they have been all right, especially if you're in a double quarterback league. But not huge losses here. So with that, we're actually just going to skip straight into Thursday Night Football, where we got the Eagles versus the Texans. Jalen Hurts, listen, they're going against a tough matchup here with Houston being number 3 overall against quarterback, allowing just over 12 points per game to opposing quarterbacks. They had a great Week 8, specifically Jalen Hurts, and it was almost exclusively through the air, which is good to see because, with these quarterbacks who can run the ball as well, it's kind of something you got to pay attention to. Are they at least an all right quarterback? Can they throw the ball? Can they get those touchdowns through the air? And if they can, that dual threat is what brings in the points. He averages 25 points per game. He's broken the threshold 5 of 7 weeks. And his 2 off games of those 7, they're still 16-plus point games. So it's a very safe option as well. Davis Mills, though, nothing new. He's 1 for 7 on the season as far as breaking that threshold. I'm not impressed. He averages shy of 12 points per game. And going against a Philadelphia number 2 defense, he's not going to be scoring that many points. We got the Chargers now versus the Falcons. We got Justin Herbert in the start column, Marcus Mariota in the sit column. Listen, these guys could easily be flipped. You could bench Justin Herbert. You could start Marcus Mariota based off their season so far. As far as the Chargers, the reason I have Justin Herbert in the start column is because it's a good matchup against Atlanta's number 30 defense, who allows 22 points per game to opposing quarterbacks. So that's going to allow Justin Herbert an opportunity to have a heyday. We'll see if he takes advantage of it. The volume is there. In his last game, he had 51 passes. He's just not being super efficient with those. He's broken the threshold 4 of the 7 weeks he's played. I still think he's going to be a fringe in this week as well, but I think he's going to be over that 19 points. For Atlanta, we have the defense for the Chargers allows 16.9 points per game, so that could give him some trouble. He had some help last week in his scoring, considering the fact that they went to overtime last game. He's still not a great option in my book. He is a fringe, though, because he has proven himself in multiple weeks. It's just not consistent enough. Heading over now to Miami Dolphins or Chicago Bears, we got Tua. He's in the start column. Justin Fields, he's also in the start column. Another big game out of Tua. It was a high-scoring one, so obviously all people are going to benefit from that. Miami, their defense definitely gives up points, so that kind of plays in the favor as far as fantasy is concerned for their offense, because they can never settle and just run out the clock. They have to continue to score. And listen, with the Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill combo, it's hard not to start whoever's quarterback there. For Chicago Bears, as I mentioned before, Justin Fields has looked good in the last few games. In the last 3 games specifically, he's broken the threshold every single one of those, and two of those he's actually gotten over 24 points. He is a ground threat, and he is able to pass the ball a little bit more compared to the beginning of the season, but most of his points are coming through the ground too. So keep an eye on that. If they figure him out, if they're able to defend against a quarterback sneak, then that could really eat away at his value. Miami, though, as I said before, their defense gives up a lot of points to opposing quarterbacks, over 20. So I have him in the start column. Now we'll head over to Cincinnati, where we got the Panthers versus the Bengals. PJ Walker just is not a great option. I don't even know if he should be starting, but they don't have a lot of great options there in Carolina. He was saved last week on a 62-yard TD. It was a bad outing, bad offense, and it's a tough matchup, so he's in the sit column. Joe Burrow, he's 5 of 8 so far this season. He averages just shy of 23 points per game, which is pretty good. I'll take it. He's had 2 games of over 30 points, and he has a decent floor where it's a little bit over 14 points. And he has the weapons and the right ingredients. They just have to make it work over there in Cincinnati. He seems to be very dependent on Jamar Chase, apparently, given this last week. Now we got Packers versus the Lions. Listen, Aaron Rodgers, I really want to start Aaron Rodgers, but he's still 0% of the season. He doesn't have a lot of great receivers. And I think that Jeffrey Okudah, the cornerback with the Lions, is able to cover at least their number one receiver, whoever it may be. And that could still cause enough problems to not let him break the 19 points for Aaron Rodgers. I think that the only way he does break the threshold is by involving the running backs more in the passing game. But this could be a very run-focused game because Detroit sucks at defending against the run as well. So I have Aaron Rodgers as a fringe. I think he's going to at least be around the 19 points, considering the fact that Detroit is number 31 overall as far as defending against quarterback. Detroit, 3 straight weeks, not breaking threshold. Jared Goff, a little bit disappointing. They can be a high-scoring offense when they're able to click, kind of like what we saw in the last game. He still wasn't able to break it, but he was close. And they're going against a tough defense here, so I don't think they'll be able to have one of those high-scoring games. And I think that this might all around be a low-scoring game with Green Bay running out the clock. And Detroit, they find more success on the running game, and they don't have Hawkinson anymore, and that's very notable. So as far as quarterbacks are concerned, losing one of those targets it's kind of rough. Now, in New England, we got the Colts versus the Patriots. Sam Ehlinger, I'm not impressed with his debut. Low-scoring game is kind of what I see in the mix here for this Indianapolis Colts versus New England game. Not excited for it. As far as Mac Jones, also have him in the sit column. He averages just over 11 points per game. He's got super low floor at just below 2 points, and he's still 0% of the season. Zappy, I think, is a better option, and I would rather see Zappy in there. Bills versus Jets. Josh Allen, he's a start. Duh. He's the number 1 QB right now in fantasy. He's number 1 in points per game with 28.1. He's number 3 in yards over the air. He's number 2 in TDs, and he's going against a decent Jets defense, but I don't think it's going to give him too much of an issue. For the Jets, Buffalo, they have a very good defense. They're number 5 overall with giving up 13 points per game to opposing quarterbacks. And I think that because their run game is limited, they might actually try to pass more. But given the 3 touchdowns Zach Wilson has thrown as opposed to his 5 interceptions, I don't think it's a safe option. He does tend to break the threshold, just not by a lot. And in Week 8, he was saved by a final minute TD to Conklin. Vikings versus Commanders. Kirk Cousins and Taylor Heinicke, I both have in the start column. This will be my matchup of the week. I think Kirk Cousins is going to take it. I think he's the better quarterback. I think he's got the better team. And they just had the addition of TJ Hawkinson. All the numbers are there as far as attempts, yards, and TDs, so I like it. There's nothing I'm very concerned about. And it's a decent matchup where you got the number 19 ranked Washington, who gives up 17.5 points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Washington, on the other hand, they had a decent Week 8. I don't know if they're going to be able to repeat it, but I kind of believe in Taylor Heinicke. I like him as a quarterback. So I do want to see him succeed. He is a running threat as well, as he proved in Week 8. And he's fighting for a starting spot, and they could be trailing the entire game, which means they're going to have to rely more on that quarterback and that passing. Minnesota, their defense is number 24 overall, giving up just shy of 20 points per game. Raiders versus the Jaguars. You got Derek Carr in the sit column. Can't start him after that terrible Week 8 where he scored 3 points. Not even 2.94. But he's only broken the threshold 1 out of the 7 weeks he's played. And with that super low floor and going against the Jacksonville Jaguar defense, I'm not for it. Jacksonville, I think the skill and ability is there. I think that there's terrible decision making there as well. That was evident in the 1 yard. They're on the 1 yard line trying to score, and he threw a pick. It was just a terrible decision. He should have thrown it out of bounds, thrown it high, something, but it was just a poor decision on his part. But they are going against the Raiders, who are number 32 overall against quarterback, giving up 23.5 points. So I think that he could have a heyday. He just needs to get his decision making on point. Seahawks versus the Cardinals. Geno Smith and Kyler Murray, I have in the start column. I can't pin down Geno. He's had decent games. He's had sub-average games. I won't say terrible games, but he's had sub-average games. But it seems like I'll say start him and he sucks, and I'll say sit him and he does all right. But going against Arizona's number 27 ranked defense, who gives up over 20 points per game to opposing quarterbacks, I got to put him in the start column. He's had 13 TDs compared to his 3 interceptions, and that's what we like to see from our quarterbacks, a decent percentage there, a decent ratio. But his first appearance against Arizona, he was shy of 13 points, so that doesn't build a lot of confidence for me, but I do think he can still perform. Arizona Cardinals, I like Kyler Murray. I kind of keep him in that start column. He has a good range, anywhere from 13.36 points to 26.64 points. That's what we've seen this season so far. And with DeAndre Hopkins, a huge factor there, getting more and more involved in the offense, it's hard to sit him now. He is still fringe, though, because of their first visit. Rams versus Bucks. Matthew Stafford, he's 1 for 7, breaking our threshold this year, a 12.87 average, and he was saved last week in Week 8 by a rushing TD, but he has another tough matchup against the Buccaneers, so I don't see him performing well, so that's why he's in the sit column. Tampa Bay, I predict this being a low-scoring game. For Tom Brady, he's only broken that 19 points 2 of his 8 games, and he's averaging 15.27 points per game. Now he's going against a LA Rams defense who's number 9 against quarterback, giving up only 14.5 points per game. So I don't think that either of these quarterbacks are going to find too much success. Titans versus Chiefs. We got Malik Willis. I covered him briefly at the very beginning and a little bit in the tight end video. They are a run center offense now, both with Derrick Henry and now with Malik Willis. And I compared them to the Chicago Bears in weeks 1 through 3. They didn't find a lot of success. The Bears didn't. They're using Justin Fields mainly in a running role, not really passing too much, and you can't really do that. You got to keep defenses honest, and if you don't, they're just going to key on the running game, and that will greatly hinder your point scoring. And he has a super low floor here at 2.4 points per game, so he's in the sit column. For Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, he's broken that threshold 5 of 7 games, and his floor right now is 17.3 points, which is pretty crazy. So I like him. Ceiling is 34-plus points, so that's a pretty safe option. He's a great option. Play him if you got him. Ravens versus Saints. Again, I have Lamar Jackson sat. I sat him last week. He barely broke the threshold, so I was wrong. But I'm saying sit him again. He's still 1 in the last 5 games. He's broken that threshold. Happened to be last game. There's some injury concern with some of his passing threats. Isaiah likely looked good, but I mean, we'll see if Mark Andrew comes back. We'll see if New Orleans Saints are good against Isaiah likely preparing for him. And I think that the Saints actually have a decent defense. They only allow 16.7 points per game to opposing quarterbacks, so they could keep him in a little bit of a pickle here. For New Orleans, they have a good matchup against Baltimore, who allows 20 points almost per game to opposing quarterbacks. They have decent targets in Olave, and maybe if some of their hurt people can come back, they'll just have more targets. But because of the injuries and because of the risk, I have Andy Dalton in the sit column, but he is a fringe for all those pros I just said. Now we got Packers versus So we're going to wrap it up, close it out here with giving you some options. Listen, sit quarterback sat. I said before that it isn't that huge of a loss just because of who is actually sat this week in buys. But I will still give you some options who might still be on your waiver wire, even in double quarterback leagues. You got Marcus Mariota. He could perform well. Jared Goff, depending on what Lions show up, he could perform well. And associated with that, Aaron Rodgers. If it's a high scoring game, Aaron Rodgers will benefit. Zach Wilson as well. He tends to be around that 18, 19 points. Lamar Jackson, he's obviously there because he has a high ceiling and he's able to break that threshold. And then lastly, Andy Dalton. There are some pros there. I just think that he's going against a tough enough defense that they'll give him some issues. With that, we're going to close it out. I just want to quickly drop again that it is Movember. I am trying here. It is day one of not shaving, so you can't really see anything. Maybe just a faint shadow, but hopefully by the end of November, there's at least something there. So I'm going to drop a link down in the description. If you want to donate, feel free. This goes all to a charity. I'm not keeping any of this money. It does say donate to me, but that is not the case. I am donating it to the Movember Foundation, where they are focused on men's health, helping with suicides and mental health, and helping just with all those sorts of cancers that affect men mostly. So with that, I'm logging off. I will catch you next week when we cover tight ends and we cover the quarterbacks. With that, we'll catch you next week.